Hi, I'm Alice the Cat. Welcome to my editing service, or should I say, my dark editing service. On today's episode, we're going to be reading Chapter 1 of a story that was submitted. But first, a quick disclaimer. Warning. The following program is recorded live and is not edited. This program may contain dark and graphic content that may be distressing for some viewers. The themes and opinions expressed in this program should be considered entirely fictional. Facts are not checked, and no sources or citations will be provided. Editing is inherently subjective. I am a psychedelic cat and not an editor. Thank you again for joining us. Viewer and listener discretion is advised. Thanks again for joining us, guys. I'm still working on my intro. It's really difficult to do a production. I don't have I guess what I would call a mixing board. Anyway, we'll just get right on with the editing. So I'm doing my best with OBS, but it's tough, like changing between scenes and stuff. So I had already read the first, because I had to start over, unfortunately, and because we had some audio problems. The audio problems being that I got 2 minutes in and realized my mic was muted. Because apparently in OBS, when you switch between scenes, different scenes can toggle the mute option. I didn't realize that. I thought the sources was the only thing that mattered for that, but I guess not. Which makes a lot of sense because you would, I don't know, just anyways. So, Chapter 1. Think you'll make it? Lynn called back to the two riders behind him. He shifted and turned to look at them. Margaret, belly swollen as any he'd seen before, sucked in uneven breaths. There was no denying how ready she was to give birth, and by the way her grip tightened on Temin's hand around her waist, she'd been ready ages ago. So, we have some good and we have some ugly. We'll start with the good. We start with a question which kind of inherently has an answer to it, which means, do you think you'll make it? It's well, that means they couldn't make that they might not make it, and if that's true, why? And so that means that they're in mortal peril, basically. And so right off the bat, we have a conflict. However, it's a nebulous conflict that we don't know, and I'm not really sure that's a good thing or intriguing. We also have a character, Lynn, immediately, and we have dialogue, so we have movement, and we also have two riders, so it introduces three characters pretty proficiently. I think there's a better way to do it, and it also isn't really, I think so it could be Lynn called back to the, we don't really need this part, he turned to look at them, we don't need this part. Margaret, belly swollen, sucked in uneven breaths. There was no denying how ready she was to give birth. See, it's kind of redundant, but it confirms, belly swollen, and it's not poison, so, there was no denying how ready she was to give birth, and by the way her grip tightened on Temin's hand around her waist, she'd been ready to go for ages. So this is the ugly. So, what the hell is this? Why, what is this? This is semicolon? Why are we using a semicolon here? Actually justify this to me. Let's use an M dash, or better yet, a comma. Or better yet, let's just get rid of it. At least to liar. I'm not sure if that's a place or a person. Margaret replied sharply, accented by sharper breaths. So, replying sharply and sharper breaths, that's just confusing. We don't need this. This is what they call adverbs. Anytime that you're using an adverb, it means that you're not picking a strong enough verb. So, a verb would be well, I think we could go with just why don't we just go with said? See how that works? At least a liar, Margaret said, accented by sharper breaths. And to be honest, if you want to get really creative, you could go with gasped. But there's two schools of thinking on this. One school, traditional school, well, I guess there's no traditional versus non-traditional, but a more traditional way is minimalism, which is you just go with said. I usually ascribe to the minimalism. You won't make it to that backwater, bad as you sound, Temin said. So is Temin our main character? Lynn eyed the man being Temin? Very confusing. There are many reasons to bring a child into the world, and not a single one of them applied to you. We're a soldier for Ferrocerium. Alright, so now we're off in the weeds. So we're less than 4 paragraphs in, and we have no idea who these characters are. We have no idea where they're going. We just know that like one of them is maybe related, maybe in love with, maybe is like the younger sister of the other one. Like maybe they're cousins, maybe they're aliens. Like we don't really have context. Like one of them could be a cat, right? Like a talking cat. Like, oh, your belly's swollen. You're about to have kittens. Ew. So now we're talking about like soldiers from this place that's made up. I don't give a fuck about this. Like, get me intrigued in the characters. And how many babes have you carried? Is this supposed to be babies? How many babes have you carried, like, personally in my personal life? I feel like that's a lot of questions, dude. You don't ask somebody about that. She grunted, and Tenem embraced behind her. Are they on the same, like are they like on like a car? Like, what are they on? Are they on like a motorcycle? They're riders, so like, I'm guessing it's like a motorcycle gang. Like, are they like in a pregnancy motorcycle gang? Like, paid time off, but you're a motorcycle gang? Chemin chose not to reply, and 3 of them were better for it. Okay, this is stupid. That's called an implicit negative, and there's a better way to do that. Like, if it is relevant that he didn't speak, you can have the characters make like sharp eye contact, and even that's like trite. But like, you can't just have like they chose not to reply. Not this early, because like the silence isn't filled by anything. It's not like we even have a moment to like digest it and be like, wow, what great action. Whether on elephants, and they're running through the Sahara on elephants. If they're riders, right? Ring wraiths? Who knows? See anything Tenement called? No, I don't. And that's the problem. There's no visual dialogue here. There's no visualization to compound the dialogue which we're getting, which is just floating talking heads with no personality or relation to each other or stakes. We don't know if they're running from something. We don't know if they're running to something. We just know that one of them's pregnant. Like, I don't care. That's human problems, man, not cat problems. Thick trees pressed along the dirt road, roots breaking at random intervals. Okay, so it's definitely probably like motorbikes. But in the distance, far enough to take more time than Lynn thought they had, shone the smallest prick of light. This is very wordy to say nothing. Yeah, this is wordy and it says nothing. Lantern ahead, maybe. You're the one with the bloody sight. Are they lanterns or not? Tenement snapped. They both knew that's not what having the sight meant. Well, good for them, because I sure as hell don't know what that means, and I sure as hell don't care. It's like The Shining, dude. Like, where the weird dude like grabs the kid and he's like, "Do you have The Shining?" And then you're like, "Oh, they said the name of the movie." A bird call broke the stillness of the surrounding forest. Okay, so now we finally have a location. This is how far down? Yeah, this is too far down. And a breeze rustled leaves. A second gust threatened to billow Lynn's cloak behind him. What the fuck does that mean? Threatened to billow a cloak? Why doesn't he just like actively shove the cloak away or something instead of just passive language about like what could have happened hypothetically? Like, oh no, the gray skies, they're threatening a tornado. Like, cut me a fucking break. Oh no, my character is too scared of everything. I looked at wet grass and I could have slipped. I'll sue for emotional damages because the second gust of wind was threatening me. Like, you're really threatened by wind this early on? Like, this character is kind of a bitch. No offense to bitches. But I do hate dogs. Like, as a cat, it is my position. Lynn sniffed the air. Is Lynn a dog? There was a cloyingly sweet... What the fuck is this word? This isn't a real word. Don't use fake adverbs. Sweet scented, carried on the wind. Like overripened fruit sitting in the sun for too long. But all I saw was the squat stone wall in the distance, no more than knee-high on foot. Huh? I don't understand what this means. It makes it sound less dramatic. It's like, whoa, a stone wall. No more than knee-height on foot. Oh, I see. It's like a small squat. I don't like the word squat stone. Because it doesn't, like, what the hell does squat mean? Like, I can imagine a stone wall, but, like, don't make me process what a squat is. Now all I see is girls in the gym, you know? It's like, oh boy, a girl doing squats on a rock wall. It makes no sense. Still surprised they didn't send you with a partner. Temen said their shared mount sliding up alongside Lynn's. Okay, so they're on the same bike. Or elephant, or whatever it was. Like, we don't know. We have no context. Margaret breathed in, very eventful. And out. Wow. The action intensifies as she leaned forward in the saddle and clutched the horn. I don't know what the horn is. Is that like the thing that looks kind of like, if I'm not even gonna say it. Temin kept his arms around her butt. Her butt, huh? Ooh. Judging by the way she shook his hands, she had squeezed too hard, one time too many. What does that mean? What? Temin kept his arms around her butt. Judging by the way he shook his hands, she had squeezed. Are we getting like a narrator's view? Like, this is a point of view issue. Since the pair wore matching red cloaks, it was hard to tell where one person started and the other ended. From the perspective of who? The weird narrator that's just like floating around giving me needless information? I don't know. Spread thin as things are, Lynn shrugged. Is this like barking orders? Like, spread thin as things are, Lynn shrugged. Because she's shrugging. Like, what is shrugging in terms of like you shrug your dialogue? I don't shrug my dialogue, dude. But I'm all the support you'll need, take my word. The same scent lingered, but the light in the distance had clarified into 2 points. Fine, I guess the sentence works. Lanterns, Lynn jerked his chin to the end of the road. I think this is supposed to be a period, because I've never Lynn jerked my chin to the end of a road before when it comes to like dialogue. Thank the six, Margaret groaned. Okay, some more useless words. So now we have 1, 2, and then there was some crap about the military. 3. So not only are we learning like 4 fake names of people that don't exist in real life, we're learning like 4 fake constructs of the world that we don't have context to, while characters on bikes ride, like motorbikes, ride through the forest towards a wall. It's a little strange, dude. I think you see the issue here, right? Like I'm totally memeing. Like I assume it's horses, right? Because they're wearing like saddles, you know. But there's no indication of that. Like there's no description of these horses. It's not like the horses are like scared and running from something. It's just like these weird characters saying weird things to each other. Lynn scrunched his nose. Oh, okay, so Lynn's a dude. I didn't mean to be misgendering Lynn. It's just like I'm used to the word Lynn being like feminine. I don't know. Humans are weird like that with their names. Lynn scrunched his nose as they crossed the outskirts of the village. Lyre, I don't know if I'm saying that right. I'm just going to say it like that, though. Lyre was a town of small homes, all bearing single lanterns. Okay. So here's an issue. So was is passive language. So, how about instead of like was a town, how about we go with like lanterns hung from small homes, right? Like that's an active verb. So you can replace the word that was with like hanged or hung. Lantern. And it looked like so many other boring places he'd been to. Well, then don't include it. He looked along the thatched roofs, strained his vision to the dark portions of the village, where the light met shadow and blurred. It's a lot of words to say he squinted into the darkness, but okay. Physiker. Okay, so now we have another Pokemon that we don't know about. I wonder what it evolves into. Like, it sounds pretty powerful, like Psychier. Like it's probably like a cross between like Mewtwo, right? Like when you see it, it's got to be like sharp. It seems like it'd be like a sharp thing, like maybe like a caterpillar Pokemon or something. But like it's like a psychic type, right? So it's like who knows? Temin shouted as if looking for a man who owed him coins. Well, was he looking for a man for coins, or was he praying? Like, is this God? Is Physiker God? Is this like his son? Like we have no context. He dismounted, assuming the horse, in a blur of red cloth, assisting his partner down as quickly as he could. we need a physiker, please. Okay, so he's looking for like a thing, right? So he's actually not looking for a man who owes him coin. He's looking for like someone who they need. Maybe like a physician or something. Like a doctor, maybe. Like, oh God, she's pregnant. She's dying. Will you make it? Oh no. Dun dun dun. He said, just as loud but far less demanding. Yeah, whatever. I guess this works. A wrinkled face, gray beard, approached from a wrinkled face, gray beard. Okay. Approached from a building, pressed to the back of the village. A small goat following. That's adorable. I like that. He looked unclean, unkempt, and generally not the sort of person you'd want tending to your ailments. Well, why don't you stop judging me, the author, or judging me as a reader and as a cat? And why don't you stop at the info dumping and find a better way to describe it? So, for example, he looked unclean is filtering. Like, he looked that way to who? Like, why don't you illustrate what unclean means? Like, his robe was stained, tattered, right? Like, stained and tattered, we can remove unclean and unkempt. And generally not the sort of person you'd want tending your ailments, and had an open wound on his left hand, right? Like, now the author is giving us, the reader, information that would make us feel emotionally as if we don't want this guy near us, rather than just being told in passive language that this is somebody who is like of low social repute. Like, show us that. Especially as the stench outpaced him. Right. So like you could have the character respond to this instead. Like, the character bristled his nose at the stench of eggs. He thought it was the goat, but it wasn't. Dun dun dun. Like something like that, you know? By the 6th. So that's like the second time. Yo, didn't we just fucking get done doing like a whole editing session on one that was like by the gray gods, where like they just like kept memeing like by the gray gods? Like, the author put it in like 6 times, dude. Like, please stop doing this. Like, I get it's like you've invented a whole paracosm in like your own religion, but like, I am not party to this religion. And I'm not going to be apostolized by this religion. Lynn approached him, staring flatly at the man's thick fingers and flat nose. This works. This is actually good. Are you the physiker here? That'd be Peter Collier. Home crossed the way. The man waved, but Lynn had already turned from him and rushed to Temmin and Margaret's side. I don't even think we've had a mention of Margaret. Have we? Okay, no, we have. Okay, no, I'm totally wrong. I'm just not paying attention. This home, come on. Who's talking here, Lynn? Lynn was taller than Temmin by a head and a bit stronger, as far as he could tell, so he stooped and let Margaret lean on him as much as she needed. This needs to be a new paragraph. It's also was taller. Is not. It's passive language. So like, how about like Lynn picked Temmin up? So he stooped to let Margaret lean on him. Yeah. How about just like an active picking up rather than just like he leaned or he stooped to let Margaret lean on him. You can get rid of this whole part. It's implicit. Back here, a man called. Is it the same man or is it a new man? Like, is it Goat Boy? He stood at the back of the building, spoke as he slid a tawny apron over his head. Wounded? Question mark. With child, Temmin replied. I've got her. Handle the horses. Okay, so it's confirmed as horses. Confirmed as horses. Do we have the word horses? Yeah, that's the first time we've had the word horse. That's a really big problem, right? Like, because this is the first time that we know that it's not a biker gang. Lynn let Temmin take the rest of Margaret's weight. She smiled and nodded, whispering little thank yous to Lynn. Did we change the spelling of Lynn? No, we didn't. Okay. I'm just dyslexic. Sweat covered her brow, matting her hair and making her shine in the light of the lanterns. That's actually pretty good. I don't know about the word making. I guess it works. I think it's more just like sweat shined on her brow, I think is what it would be. Because like the sweat is like the active object, right? Like the object that's being acted upon is the sweat. And so like it's covering her brow, but like matted her hair and making her shine. Like it's just very awkwardly phrased, like and making her shine. Like it's just very strange. Rephrase that. Good details though. Temmin didn't so much as look back at him. Sorry. Lin rubbed the bridge of his nose and shook his head. They should have stopped the last town, but Margaret had insisted on getting to Lear. Lyra? I don't know. Supposedly to be closer to the Ferrocerium. Is this a real word that I just don't know? Because I feel like last time we like looked up like literal Blanchardism, if you remember correctly. It's a synthetic pyro. What the fuck? What? What the hell? Hold on. Doxing myself here. Is it the same word? No, it's not. Okay. Ferrocerium. Yeah, no, not different word. Once the babe was born. It's interesting they're using the word babe, not baby, but like I'm not going to complain about it. But it all seems too reckless to Lin. Right, this needs to be illustrated, not told. So he can say this in dialogue, right? Like, this just seems so reckless. And then we'll be like, oh, wow, this dude thinks it's reckless. But just telling us it's reckless, I don't even trust you. Oh, I'm the author. I know everything about my character. I don't trust you. I don't know you. I don't see the character saying it. I see no evidence of this. I just see you making bold claims about your characters. Like, prove it. Like, did he say anything? Like, if I had to interrogate you in court, right, on cross-examination, are you going to sit there and, like, well, did he say that he thought it was seemingly reckless, or did you assume that? Pacing around the horses was the man that had directed them to the physiker. It's just a little awkward, but I guess it works. Like, it just, the man should always be categorized by something more specific, like Goat Boy, for example. Like, we know him. Like, he had a beard. Like, that's like a whole character, you know, like a character with a goat following him. Like, that's like a bro you can remember. But like, just this like rando dude who was like, oh, go in my house, man. Like, we don't care about you. Whether he was examining the saddlebags or horses themselves wasn't obvious, but he kept far enough away as to not be bitten as the mounts stumped. This whole thing is written very passive languagey. Second visitor in so many days. I imagine the children are beside themselves. I don't know why he says that, but that's weird. Lin nodded and went to his saddlebags, putting feed for Nebra, his horse, and then some for the couple's horse. Okay, so now we have like more characters, but at least now we care about the horses and we know they're horses. So it's not his bike. It's not his bike. It's his horse. Confirmed. Apologies. Is this another person or is this just like a throat noise? It's not necessary. Like, it's like, for realism, like, what's your argument for this word? Apologies. Realized I didn't give myself a proper introduction. I'm the Alderman of Lyre. Alderman Prior. I don't care who he is. Lin turned. The man wore a self-proud grin and extended his hand. Lin pursed his lips and shook the man's hand. Lindell of the Ferrocerium. Or Lindell. Oh, I see. Okay, so it's short for Lindell. So Lin is Lindell. Every small village, which I don't care about, it's just like needless information now. Every small village had a person who thought too highly of themselves, and more often than not, it was an alderman. Is this like fanfic? Like, this reads like a Wikipedia page that I'm reading about, like, the Ackermans in Shinji no Kyojin, or Shinjiki no Kyojin. About as important to the way of things as the stable hand at the end of the day. What's that mean? Is that like the guy you sleep with? Stable hand at the end of the day? Ooh. Let's delete this whole thing. Oh, no doubt. Knew by the look of you, you were you lot were with them. But I can say, well, how did he know that? Like, by the look of you, like, be more specific. Specify. How do I cross this out? Specify. Be specific. But I can say I didn't expect 3. Usually just a single pair comes through. Algernon Prior touched the chain around his neck, a sigil of his station and one meaning nothing on the roads and less to Lynn. Well, then why the fuck are you mentioning it? Well, it's worth nothing, and immediately that, like, it's not like a notable part of the world, then why are you even telling us about it? Like, oh, this random side character had this thing that, like, no one knows about. A sigil of his station and one meaning nothing on the roads and less to Lynn. Like, what does that mean? Like, if it means less, then say that. But if it means something, then say that. Like, if it means that he's like, oh, we hate your kind here, I see that symbol around your neck, that's like the swastika, you're a Nazi, then, like, just go with that. Lynn nodded, returned to the horses. Because there's no conflict here, right? Like, you've diffused any conflict that there could have been. Lynn nodded and returned to the horses, loosening the first saddle strap before realizing he needed to find a stable. He didn't need to explain to the man why there were 3 of them instead of 2. Yeah, seriously, like, that was my thought too. Like, why are you talking to this guy? Like, I don't answer questions, officer. The more people who knew women couldn't bind when pregnant, the more brazen would-be attackers might act. Bind, like the spell from RuneScape, or bind, like trying to take the breast tissue and reduce it to pass for male, as to fool people who would be otherwise sexually predatory towards females who are potentially vulnerable and pregnant? Like, bind as in, like what are we talking about here? Ahem. The weird dude cleared his throat, something seeming to be a habit of the man. I understand now why you put the in there, but, like, I still don't like it. And I still don't like this either. Okay, apparently my thing's broken. It wasn't going. Lynn turned and stared at the man. More accurately, he stared flatly at the flat of the man's nose. I feel like this is written as a joke. Like, we had sharply followed by sharp, and then now we have flatly followed by flat. Like, what's going on with this? More accurately, he stared flatly at the flat of the man's nose. Abnormally flat, really. You're trolling, right? You submitted this as a troll? Abnormally flat, really, all things told. Boom. He'd have to add it to his list. He'd have to add it to his list of things to tell yet another character we don't care about or know. Not that speaking of a person's unusual features was smiled upon by the 6. Okay. But it was how they spent their time together. We don't need any of that. When villages all seemed to appear as wood-made copies. Oh, wood-made, sorry. I thought that was an L. My brain just saw an L. When villages all seemed to appear as wood-made copies of each other, and all the binders of the Ferrocerium dress and act the same, you had to find joy in the differences of other things. Who's you? Me? Like, me personally? I'm a fucking cat, dude. You don't get to tell me what to do in your world. Illustrate it. You have to find joy. No, I don't. I can pillage your village, dude. You think I won't come in there with my fucking claws? Oh, I have to find joy in the differences. Oh, no. How about this? I calculate it into my plan to take over your fucking kingdom. Right? So, like, don't tell me, like, you. Like, don't talk to me as the author. Illustrate this. Like, how about Lindell found joy in the differences? Like, he could, like, I don't know, run his hand on, like, the wood and be like, oh, this is a little bit different than next door, even though it's built the same. And then I would tell you, wow, this is useless information. And it would be. And Genro would be beside himself with all the ways Lynn planned to describe Alderman Pryor's nose. Okay, this is kind of funny, I guess. It was like someone had stolen the meat off of it, leaving behind sad cartilage and sadder nostrils, as deflated as they were. Okay, this information is like, it's actually so characterizing that it's coming too late. Like, why is this only appearing now? You should put this way up top. Like, when we first introduce him, it should be like, it shouldn't just be the man mentioned like ominously twice. The man. The same man. It's like a dude. Like, he's walking around as a faceless NPC structure. Why don't you just move this information about his nose up to there? Because then we'll remember him, right? Like, Goat Bro, pff, you're out, dude. Now it's Nose Man. As if someone had, against their better judgment, someone being who? Someone being a hypothetical person that we're not talking or reading about, and this is just distraction, probably. Stolen the piece of his nose and allowed it to spit. Oh my god, it's just still going, dude. I don't fucking care about his nose. You aren't here to take any of the children, are you? The man asked, brows knitting together. I don't... okay, fine. To the man's credit, his voice didn't waver, and his chin was held high. You could just go with, like, the word... Ready for this? Watch this. Chin held high when he asked. The question was enough, so was is a big, big problem in this. Was. Like, how many times are we going to have this word? Was enough to pull Lin from his thoughts and let the smile that snuck its way. So it's a passive smile. This is like what police do, right, when they're writing a report. Like, the trigger was then pulled and gunfire then happened. The suspect was then struck, rather than the cop shot, right? Like, the cop shot the robber. It's like the gun then discharged, at which time the fleeing suspect was hit by fire. So it's like the smile is sneaking. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm being too nitpicky, but I don't like it. All right, how long have we been going? 'Cause I'm bored. I'm gonna start speed doing this. All right, we'll do 15 minutes because I pretty much have like what I'm gonna say in this. It's like the same problems again and again. So I'm just gonna read. Are there any here that need to be evaluated? Lynn asked. Children, you mean? Alderman said, as if forgetting he had brought it up. Yes, here the squat man said. So now it's the squat man. It's not even the same dude. It's just like there's different names for him every time. Lynn sighed, or unless it's a different guy. But who the hell's the squat man? Is he the dude from the fence with the girl who's doing squats on the fence? Other characters I've invented because I'm bored? No one here can be evaluated, least of all children. Though I think Denpy here might have a knack for smelling the witchcraft you lot do. Lynn frowned. He'd make a note. Liar needed an evaluator. General might be happy to do... I don't know any of these fucking characters. Who are any of these people? I don't care about any of these people. And now, it's not even dialogue that's breaking. It's the narration itself is breaking. It's like, is this a screenplay? Like, no. Like, what is this? The hell is this? It's not an end of a paragraph. It's just ridiculous. Lynn turned to open his eyes as wide as he could go. The rooftops were empty. Were is the same problem as was. Passive language. And all around the trees shifted with the wind that promised winter's arrival. Alderman Pyro spoke. Something about that damned goat. I like the goat. Denry, Den. Lynn frowned as the creature wailed. He spun in a... Okay, so... New paragraph because it's a new person doing a new action. It's like the dude spoke. Something about the goat. Denry. Why isn't it in quotations, by the way? Like the thinnest thread ever seen, and it caught the sun just the right way, and it danced with its warmth. Okay, this is just very cliche. But it was night. Okay, instead of telling me but it was night, how about we put the fact that it was night way up top with the fact that there's horses. Like, they're riding horses, it's at night, it's in a forest. Like, give us that in the first fucking page. Get inside and take that one loved goat. Why is this capitalized? Is it like a song like one loved, but it's a song about the goat? Come on. If the man took offense to Lynn's language, the draw of Lynn's blade dissuaded him from pressing his point. Okay, I kind of like this, actually. The problem with this is that, like, we're an omniscient, we're like an omniscient reader. Like, we're an omniscient narration point of view. So it's just really weird because, like, we seem to be following Lindell, but then at the same time, we're following, like, the man. Like, it's not Lindell doing this. It's just the author telling us kind of what happened. And, like, I want it to be, what's the word? Attached to? Attributed. I want the actions to be attributed to a character doing them actively, rather than just passive things happened and we being told about it. Like, what's next? We're going to be told what the fucking worms on the floor are going to be doing? Like, we don't care. We care about knowing what the characters are going to do because they're inspired to do them, not just like, so like the man took offense to Lynn's language. Like, if the man took offense to Lynn's language, the Drovlin's blade dissuaded him from pressing his point. Like, I know that because you've told me that, but I haven't seen that. Like, how about the man, like, how about Lindell, like, takes out his blade as the man is talking and then the man shuts up and then Lindell puts the blade back in. Like, that's like, shit, man, that's a threat, dude. That'd be active. That'd be like an active thing that's happening. Lindell shot a glance toward the medicinary, I don't know. The world exploded, literally or figuratively. I hate figurative language. And strands of sun-kissed golden threads. Okay, it's little crap. Only visible to Lynn through the binding sight, which again means nothing. He'd been lucky enough to be born with. Okay, so it's The Shining. Lucky in the sense that he could see his potential death arching towards him, taut but beautiful. Okay. Lynn rushed forward and extended his left arm fully in front of him, sword pointed down. Using his pummel as a focus, he pushed his will into the world like a thread through a needle. So, how about like a sword into a man? Why are you telling? Oh, he's so powerful. He's afraid of his cloak going over his eyes while he rides a fucking horse. And when he uses his sword, it's like a needle. Oh, it's so powerful. He's so good, but it's like a needle. Like, come on. And at the same time, pushed forward with his other hand, his own binding arcing into the one rushing towards him. What? I don't know what's happening. They crashed together into golden orange sparks. Lynn searched for the source, keeping his arm extended and pivoting on the ball of his feet. Is this like Spidey sense? What's going on here? The horses had moved further from him, and he was thankful for that. He didn't need Temmin and Margaret to survive the birthing and then come out to find Lynn had failed to keep their horse alive. Oh, this is so confused. Okay, so it's like, I'm not even going to go into it. It's confused language, though. Honestly, I'm going to skim the rest. I'm really bored. Okay, there's 2000. Yeah, we can go to there. He couldn't very well yell, come out, or blah, 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 blah. Okay, here we are. Another flick of light, another forcing of his will into the world. Each binding took a toll. There was a chance that exactly what his assault meant to do. Wear Lynn down. Lynn scanned the homes. Not a single inquisitive child or overbearing mother glanced at the doorways. This actually works. This is strangely enough, I was looking for things to complain about because that's my job, but like this actually works. It was too late into the night, too close to winter. I hate these choppy sorts of sentences. Too many. I hate this list. Too many horrible things had happened over the last year, and it wouldn't surprise him to learn even a place like Lyre had heard of the sort of awful things befalling some of the most remote villages. Okay, this is dialogue. Needs to be talked between the characters, not told to us as a narrator. Because otherwise, it's just like, what's happening during this? Like, we don't know. It's just, everything's not like, it's just like, pause. Oh, by the way, like, here's this bullshit you don't need to know. The characters don't even need to know it either, by the way. But if the characters did need to know this, hypothetically, then they would talk to each other about it. Like, the dude gets off the horse. You see any horrible things? Not today, I haven't. What you doing here? There's usually 3 of you. You guys are spell-casting magic people, and we hate you. Oh, yeah, well, that thing around your neck, we also hate you. And if you keep talking, I'll basically cut you with this blade. All right, fine, I'll take you to the doctor. Like, there's got to be, like, some driving motivator here, some attractor that we're moving towards, instead of just this, like, arbitrary crap where we keep hitting pause to just tell me about the world that I don't care about. There's no image. There's no stakes. There's just random characters running around with The Shining. He couldn't very well yell, come out, or I guess he's being, like, attacked by, like, orange lights, or he'd have more than the assailant out and about. Like a biker gang. So instead, he watched, hoping the 6 were blessing all his senses and not just his sight. So we could just say, like, he's religious. We get it. Another flash of the same warm, ethereal light of bindings arched towards him, unimaginative. What? Lynn didn't send his own back in reply. Instead, he danced around the binding, racing towards the homes it had come from. Wind dried his eyes, but blinking might mean missing a binding flying for his throat. So dry as they might be, he willed his eyes to remain painfully alert. There, he saw it. Covered head to toe in bindings, which were blurred only barely by tattered string of cloth, was an untethered... Oh my god. So now we've added another thing that we, the audience, don't know or care about. And also, only barely is like, you can't do this. You have to find something that you can't do this. It's using first of all, barely isn't even like there's no such thing as a strong adverb, right? Adverbs are things that end with ly. You can always have a stronger verb than an adverb. And so like barely means that like the word blurred is not powerful enough. So like covered head to toe in bindings which blurred his vision. Like fine, fair enough. At least something was acting upon the vision. Whereas right now it's like blurred, but only barely by tattered strings of cloth. Like what does that mean? Blurred is not even the word that you would want because like does string blur things? I don't think it does. I don't know. Wild eyes with bindings laced through the colored portions locked onto his. Lynn slowed his breath and did his best to steady his hands. It had been guaranteed one of these one-loved abominations might attack, but it was why he was here. Escorting the pair, never could be sure what would or wouldn't happen out on the road. Oh my god, I'm done. All right, it's time to write my critique because I'm done. All right, let's fade to black. How do we do that? We'll be right back. Like literally, we'll be right back. It's like magic because I have to pause and write it, but immediately we'll come back. Like, poof. Okay, so ready? Poof. Isn't that fantastic? All right, so here we go. I'm gonna give you my finalized thoughts. So this is also very confusing. I have no idea what's going on. We are missing critical, and I mean this, critical details and context. There is zero intrigue, and there is no mystery. There's no reason I want to keep reading. It's just like things are happening, but there's no stakes, there's no characters, there's no plot. The pacing is confused. We're dropped headfirst and falling into chaos, but it isn't an exciting chaos of which I want to stabilize and learn more of. It is a muddled and convoluted chaos, and that is before we broach the issue of the grammar and construction of the language itself. The attributes of this writing not directly related to the plot, characters, pacing, conflict, etc. are ineffective, and as stated above, muddled. There are many antecedent and narrator points of view shifts here that make a coherent flow impossible to follow. We jump between raw forms of info dumping from the narrator to world builders notes that literally break from narration of the story to give us a you, in quotations, the reader notes. There is also language as written being passive, and that is an issue. For example, the abuse of adverbs, words that end in ly, for example, poorly, happily, hastily, these are almost always to be replaced with powerful verbs or dialogue in exchange. So for example, grease-covered, smiled, and dashed. There is another issue with flow that also pertains to point of view, which that is which elements of the story we are focused, or in this case, lack thereof, during which points. So for example, in this story, one moment we were talking about the father and how like he was like, I assume father, the archetype of the father. And then all of a sudden his like, I assume like wife or partner or whatever gets like removed from the scene and is like replaced, and it just like, it doesn't make any sense because then we like jump to him talking about the dude's nose, and then like that goes on for like a full paragraph. Then we mention like a new character who we've never heard about, and it does this like weird flashback to like thinking about that character, and it's just very head hoppy, and we don't know where we are within the narrative or within which character, or like then we're like in the other guy's head, and he's like, oh, his blade is keeping me from running my mouth because whatever, and it's just there's no indication like who the main character is. So in addition, we have no clear indication of which new magic is being cast and what the world engine allows for, much less even who the group of main characters are. And when there are an established group of main characters, they are then immediately separated and replaced by a mention of side quest characters that are left underdeveloped, and also two random characters, the goat bro and the flat nose dude. And like that's fine, but these characters, given the spotlight, are like a cat chasing a laser. I can't pretend to figure out how to chase something that is just red swirls from focus to focus to focus, and then just when I'm maybe starting to find a pattern or like grip some coherence, it leaps onto the ceiling, and then there's like a random gun battle archetype, and it's like, what's happening here? There's just too much. Like, there's just like orange explosions. The dialogue itself is not horrible. It's just not robust or good enough yet. There needs to be significantly more dialogue and less attribution gimmicking, aka trying to stuff an entire paragraph of side info after someone speaks. The dialogue is supposed to create a flow and function, and right now I get no subtext or function. So subtext is like the story beneath the story, like what's really happening when a character says something, is there meaning to it? It's like there is no meaning to the discussions they're having and no clear indication of tone or dynamic. For example, the scene with Quentin Tarantino in *Inglourious Basterds, when the Nazi is hunting down the innocent Jews to victimize, and he does so by interrogating innocent farmers who are hiding the people he's trying to hunt down safely. And they sit across from each other at the table, and they like, it's the subtext is that they're having such a polite conversation, they're giving each other tea and sugar, but the subtext is that like one dude is a fucking murderer and he's there to like basically literally murder people, and it's fucked up. So like that is a plot, that's a conflict, and in this we don't have anything similar. So it's like there's nothing drawing me into the reading. It's just like random shit's happening and we don't care. And it's like, yeah, this dude's lady is pregnant and like they're looking for like a doctor, but we're not calling her a doctor for some reason, because we're in like a parallel universe or something where everyone just speaks weird. So anyways, in this instance, we only know of some soft allusion to a bloodline type of conflict between places we haven't even heard of, which is like the place we're in now, like Lyre, and a place we have no clue of that I don't even remember the name of. Like he like rides into a town that's the same as every other stick town out there, looks at some thatch roof cottages and decides to not burninate them. Obviously, I harped on the issue about contextless info dumps enough by now, but there's also the issue of contextless exposition. For the main example, the horse versus bike analogy, like I knew it was a horse, but that's only because I'm a really smart cat, and I doubt most cats are going to know about horses or other such things. All this being said, here, let's summarize. So please, less info dumping, replace with it dialogue, and the dialogue itself needs to have subtext or a purpose to exist. It has to push the plot forward. Please keep consistency with the named characters. The man is too generalized, and it gets confusing who we're talking about, especially with, like, God, in one paragraph, like 3 or 4 different characters who we have, like, seriously, zero context to who these characters or names are. Please keep a cogent topic thread and do not deviate until that purpose is concluded. Similarly, this actually becomes a paragraphings issue, because a couple of times there were what we called antecedent switches, where like you're switching from head to head of like who we're in and whose information we're getting and whose perspective, and you're not breaking the paragraph, so it becomes muddled in with the previous information. So it's like one dude laughed and then the other dude thought, but you can't tell whose thoughts are the same as the same dude who's laughing because you didn't break the paragraph. Find a way to manage adverbs and other passive language like was and were. Those can almost always be replaced and written with a stronger sentence, just on the level of analyzing the words themselves rather than the greater plot and things. The just, was, and were, if you concentrate on just writing those words out, I promise the writing will be stronger. It won't fix the other problems, but it is in itself a problem. Do not talk to you, the reader. We don't exist. Like, I'm just a cat. Like, you shouldn't be giving me a tourism pamphlet on your world. You should be showing me how the characters felt about the world. Like, it was like putting it would be like putting your hand down on a hot stove. Why is it my hand on a hot stove? Why isn't it the character putting their hand on a hot stove, right? So ask yourself if the information you're providing is strictly necessary, and if it is necessary and you can explain why that it is necessary, ask if you're doing so in the right spot, because in a lot of cases I found that the information you were giving wasn't terrible, it was, however, disruptive. And so all that said, I think that this writing is the mark of someone who is inexperienced with writing but isn't necessarily completely off the mark with what they want to be writing about. There definitely seems to be like a creative genesis here, even if it's just kind of like swapping the word magic for The Shining and swapping the word physician for physiques or whatever the hell it is. Like, there seems to be at least some sort of like anime or whatever genre that this is universe here that is building like high fantasy. That seems to be, if not exceptionally trite and derivative, it seems to be at least creative, and usually that's more than I can say about some of the stuff I've read. So overall, it's not good. It needs a shit ton of work. I would say it even needs a rewrite, but mostly it's pervasive issues with the actual way that the whole entire thing is constructed. And until those problems are fixed, this is going to remain boring and unreadable. And I assume that the rest of the thing drags just as much the same. I'm sure more like interesting events may have happened if I kept reading, but the thing is those interesting notes are still with the issue of, you know, the rest of the context and just the boring language and the passiveness of it all. And so I don't necessarily care how cool those events were. Like, I can go watch anime if I want cool events. And on that note, thank you guys so much for joining. If you would like to sign up, please do so only in good faith, and understand this. I am a sarcastic performer. I am a cat. And yeah, thanks you so much for joining. Meow. We'll be back again next time.